what building does she work in? All right, all right. Well, I'm not.
Do you want to
I
repeat
just
it, or
wanted
do
to
you?
know somebody who was looking out for their own interests. So I will repeat the question as we go. Hello, hello. All right. So the question is why is the Northwest building being used for a very small program when there's not a playground here at the middle school? Correct? All right. So there are a few different things with that. The Northwest building is a single grade building. This is a 4-grade building for one. So we couldn't just trade one grade out into that building because in here we house 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. We house over 800 students in this building. That building is only designed for a capacity of around 200 to 250 for one. The TLC building, or the TLC program, is housed in there, as well as the ELL program, as well as the gifted program, and I believe there's another program that is housed in that building, if I'm not pulling it off the top of my head correctly. So that space is a little bit larger outside, definitely on that end of town, and it was designed as an elementary school when it first started, so there is a lot more playground over in that area. The equipment over there is not designed for children even of middle school age, so that would have to be changed as far as the playground would go over there. So the feasibility really didn't come into having a middle school program over there in that building, if that makes sense. Okay. Critical race theory?
Our critical race theory is not in our curriculum, nor is it in the state standards.
No, no. So the other question was critical race theory, which is a theory and a design that some people do use and some districts have held on to or went to, but it is not something that's recognized within the state, and it's not a curriculum or a core requirement for any district to do. We are looking at equity and other things within our district, but not that theorem.
It's not that we don't address those kinds of issues. I know they do.
That was right. So, well, the question was, what are we teaching during Black History Month, correct? So what they would be teaching is probably in various subject levels. We are not educators and we don't design curriculum. I just want to make sure we get that out there, before we even start. What happens building level, day to day, that is not necessarily something that we dive down into. We have had history, there's presentations that go on. I've seen some subject matter that they've talked about in various places, but I don't know exactly what the curriculum is or what exactly we're looking at specifically, building by building and grade by grade. Those would all vary by teacher, by building, and by celebrations. So.
The last part is the most important. It varies by teacher, which teacher.
So, I guess maybe we should do some introductions. I'm Brian Jakes. I'm the current president of the school board. This is Matt Smith. He is the current vice president. And then Harry Carroll, who is a member as well of our school board. And this is Dr. Mayer, our superintendent, who's in the front row over here. So she was clarifying the question that he asked earlier. So she didn't ask a question. He had asked about critical race theorem. He had asked about, right. And that is, huh? That's not something that's recognized that districts have to adhere to as far as curriculum. That's kind of just something that some districts adopt, some districts do not. It's not something that has to be part of your curriculum or going forward. So we are focusing more on equity in our district versus critical race theorem. That's kind of a little bit more radical for us. Excuse me, ma'am. So the question was, would there be repercussions if people were teaching that within their classroom? As long as people are educating people, there are various topics that people are educating people on, whether they're core curriculum ideas or if they're somewhat abstract sometimes in different classrooms or other thoughts. Just for instance, I know Mr. Garinger touches on a lot of different topics within his classroom to kind of give exposure to different ideas and to bring things to people. So we educate people across platforms, but we don't necessarily drive them into a straight mold or into a line of thinking. That's not what we're designed to do. That's not what a system should do.
Thank you. Once upon a time, I was a history teacher. And the choice of textbooks that you have for teaching history, I think, is critical. And it's not part of the critical race theory as I understand it right now. But it does, the books I used had people through history, whether they were black or whether they were white, whether they were Indian or Native American, the contributions they made to civilization and to the society was covered, and the kids were tested on that. And I think that's about all that is really necessary, that everybody is a citizen, they're free, they have representation, and if they made contributions back through history, that should be included in the classes that they're taught. And they were with mine. I taught in the high school and not in Marshall, but the textbooks included that. So the choice of textbooks, I think, is the important thing, and to come up with just something critical race theory for one race or contributions, I'm not sure how that would be, but as I understand the critical race theory, it's not dealing with contributions made in history. It has a different focus. Here you go, Brian. I have two things I want to speak about tonight. One, was already brought up about critical race theory, and I'm glad of that. But the only other thing I had to say is I wanted to compliment the board. I'm not sure this is on.
It is.
Okay, I wanted to compliment the board for having an open forum, and I hope we have more of these and that they are productive. I know there's some reluctance to come out and face the public and hear whether there's complaints or compliments. That it takes a little bit of courage to do that, and that was the second thing I wanted to comment on tonight. I think you're in the right steps. I think we're going to have more public comments and involvement, and you need involvement in the school. And I congratulate you for doing that.
We definitely do need the town to support the school. So without the town, there is no school in my mind as well. So.
I'm going to segue then maybe into that part. Thank you again for having the forum. I ask, I guess, as representative on behalf of the city, can you tell us what discussions, plans, thoughts are moving forward with building new schools? Are we going to build new schools? Are we going to just improve what's existing? What are discussions and plans that have gone on about the property out at the Hack Center? Now that the piece of it that the city was responsible for in getting the buildings down, now that they're down, where do we go from here?
So the question is from Mayor Sweats, who happens to be here with us this evening, is what the district is looking at doing going forward If there's any thoughts of moving forward with the Hab Center property where the Spainhauer School is, and to looking if there's any kind of building or moving in that direction. And then also, that was also a question that was sent in. One of the questions that we received via email was, with CARES money or the ESSER money, why don't you just build a school? Well, a school building for is going to be roughly about $40 million, just to throw that out there. The only way that a school will be built is from the support of the voting body of the town. There has to be a bond issue that's going to be passed to support the school. The school was able, or the board was able to work on saving their money and adding on to the Spainhauer building for a wing, but that is not a feasible, the school board can't save that kind of money to build an entire school or finance that or lease purchase or go back out, because that has to be a bond issue. There has to be some town support with that. So I'm going to let Matt add on to that because we've talked a little bit about that.
I'm gonna go home.
That, we're working on that with the strategic plan, so we'll have kind of a phase that we're gonna go through and a direction to go through. I drew up it was just a sketch on Google Earth on the middle of the campus out there, and it was similar to like a cloverleaf type building. So it would have been second, third, fourth, and fifth grade, because we got to get the fifth graders out of these trailers. Yeah, they're almost all gone, and I don't know.
The buildings that are there are not feasible, they're not in shape to go back in and place students in or place people in really much at all.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
The brick exterior that you can see is still very intact there, but when the state left, they allowed water to flood back into the tunnels. There's a lot of mold issues, other things. They wouldn't be something that we could renovate and turn into a building. That's why that building was torn down as it was in the first place, the main administration building there. The buildings that are left there that you're still seeing, a lot of that is still city property. The school district only has the property that goes back basically to that fence area, to the woods area on the side of Spainhauer, and then back over to the smokestack area over on the geographical challenge, I guess that's the west side of the property, and then it goes back roughly to the back of where the admin building is. Behind that loop where those two larger buildings are, where the cottages are, even behind that, all that is city property.
And I think that's the inner circle, right, is what they refer to it, which is where we kind of plotted out which there's plenty of room there, as long as Google Earth wasn't off by about that much. There's plenty of room there, but it's kind of the point of starting these was because we know we need to move forward. This town needs it needs a building in it for schools, but we can't do it without the community. So we've got to get in front of you, and we got to find out why we can't get that, and change what we need to change to get it done. So.
Part of the idea of the trading with the city of going from the land that was on the area and to the Ag Center property was that no one was supportive of building anything in that plot of land. We helped trade with the city and come into a building that we could add something onto and end up with a building that's probably somewhere between $8 to $10 million worth of building now that is totally complete for the district, that we were able to come into for 5.5 of our building costs, as well as other renovations for those at home that couldn't hear.
You can't grow if the school system, I mean, you can't bring people in here if the school system's not, up to what they're looking for when they come. We know.
So the mayor has also pledged to be in support of the school district as we start looking forward and going on to things as well. So, but partnerships is what makes progress, and we've got to have a partnership. Everyone won't come here. You can't bring a company into town if you don't have schools that are advantageous, if you don't have a commerce district, if you don't have a certain level of places for people to go and spend money, recreational, restaurants, those kind of things. It doesn't matter what it is. You've got to have things to draw people to come into town. And one of those biggest draws for people is to look at the school district because everyone brings kids in. And so, improving a school district, grades, buildings, capacity, whatever it would be, all those are pluses to people looking to try to come and move into our area with industry. And so, the town and the school district are very linked with, support of the future.
When I've heard of businesses saying that they would not move to Marshall, their business to Marshall, because we hadn't passed a levy since the 70s.
1973,
So,
I think.
it scares them to invest in a community that they feel like is scared to invest back in them,
We're
so.
one of two school districts in the state that does not have an operating budget.
Yes, we don't have an operating, that's very
There's only two schools in the state, I think, that doesn't have one, and we don't have it. Because the voters have never given us.
So is the only way is to get on the ballot, have a bond, get the money for the school? Is that the holdup, or, I know it's the money, absolutely.
Yeah.
It has to be a tax levy, and you have to raise the taxes.
Yeah, it would have to be a tax levy,
But what you're saying is basically true, yes.
yes.
We have to get on the ballot with something that passes to be able to go. There's a difference in whether you put things on the ballot for April elections or whether you put them on November elections as well, as far as the percentages of people that have to pass those kind of things as well. So we are talking about gearing up more. We're talking about gearing up more of a speaking campaign and finding out what people actually really would support so that we can put something together that will be successful to put on a ballot. Right now, we are trying to garner more support. We're trying to be more visible. Hopefully with the audit situation now far behind us, now looking at other things to the future, of course, there's always a hiccup in your plans. No one planned to have a fire that disrupted the school year for kids yet for a third consecutive year in a row. And it also disrupted the lives of families as well in our community. It's, you know your neighbors, you know what each person in the community has to go through of finding things out. One of the other questions that came in through email was about why we have early out Wednesdays. Why don't we just have school all the time? Well, there has to be adult learners as well within the district. There has to be professional development. There has to be so many hours that are devoted to enhancement of your staff through professional development by standards that are given to us as well. CTA is currently looking at some things right now. We've discussed some things on, will they stay Wednesdays? Do they need to be maybe an all-day session where instead of having a half day, that way people can kind of plan a little bit differently. Having 4 half-days a month or 2 full days a month look a lot different when you're looking at childcare and what you can do with children after school. So those are some things that we're going to be looking at. So maybe when you see the calendar come out and you say, why on earth are they going to have 2 Mondays out in October next year? Well, maybe that's because we're not having 4 Wednesdays out. So don't assume that everything's going on as a change. Some in the community will say you're trying to give people extra days off. Hopefully people inside the district will be able to publicize that, and by being in situations like this, we can talk about the fact that this is what works more effectively. We're hearing from a lot of our teachers that half-day Wednesdays, I don't get started on much, so it's kind of a dead day for us. Well, if it's going to be a dead day, then we just need to have it be a dead day all around and just put it in a different place. We have to have so many hours, and we have to have so many professional hours, hours of in-seat instruction for the students and hours of professional development. So.
When we talk about our school district and people being willing to move to town and so on, we always look at the buildings. Now, we've had a number of superintendents since the year 2000, and some of those had ballots run every year. And one of the attempts was out here at the Garinger property. And during that time, the group that came in to help facilitate the bond issue did a study, and they didn't study the elementary. That was going to be elementary out there. But they did the middle school and the high school, and they were rated by 3 different organizations. One was Great Schools, one's the State Department of Education, and the other is School Diggers. And they all have a different way of studying to rate the schools, but they come up with similar ideas. And taking the School Diggers, and they do it across the United States. It's not just in Missouri. And there's been times that, well, back at that time, the high school was rated at the 82nd percentile, and the middle school was at the 87th percentile, which means that only 13 schools were worse off than Marshall is in the middle school, and there was only 18 schools that were worse off than Marshall for the high school. And my feeling has been that we need to have, if we have community understanding where we are at, and if our ratings go up, I think you'll have the people that you need to pass a bond issue.
I think, Roger, that study, we talked about that once before, but one of the reasons that was so low was because of our inability to bond and pass bond issues and build. And that was a high determining factor in it. I'm answering Dr. Blakely's question. And one of the reasons that study was because of our inability to fund schools, build schools, move schools, and that was one of the higher indicators. You know how those things are put together. You get more points for something and more points for this. And that one was weighed heavily on the fact that we could not. Now, I worked on three bond issues and lost all of them while I was in the school district. I know you probably worked on some too. And it's terribly disappointing to put all those information out there and tell everybody, you know, what all the good things that can happen. And then I think we went down by less than 100 votes. One of the first ones I worked on, I think it's just before you came here, we went down by less than 100 votes, and it was devastating. So.
If our rating goes up, as far as the performance of the students, I think that the vote will be there in the community to build buildings. And schools are not just buildings. Because I've attended a country school when I was a kid. I attended Tyne Avalon up here, and these are all small districts. Now, I don't know if Tyne Avalon has ever had a bond issue in the recent past, but some of the schools that are that size, in the northwest corner of the state, west corner, the small schools outrate what Marshall's doing, and they haven't had bond issues. It's the quality of the program that they put out. And if we have the backing of the community, that we have a good program, our students are performing well, then I think you'll have the backing you need to pass a bond issue. Because I'd vote for a bond issue. I haven't voted for a bond issue, and the reason being is our ratings are so low.
Sure.
And the lowest it got, it continued to go down until just the recent past. This year, I got an email, I never have gotten one before, from School Diggers, but they did email me and let me know where they rated Marshall. And we've gone up quite a little bit from the past year. Well, from 2 years skipped.
Yeah.
And, but when we were at the 93rd percentile, when 7% of the school districts in the state were worse than Marshall, and the rest of them were better than Marshall.
I would really encourage you to look into School Diggers. Yeah. Look into who leads that organization and look into their research. That's all I'm going to say. I just encourage you to look into it.
And I would argue on that, Roger, that it went up, and what have we done? We've put an elementary building up there at Spainhauer, and we've made progress out there. So I think that's one of the determining factors.
So So another thing that's changed dramatically in the district is curriculum, and people actually being all aligned underneath the same curriculum. Curriculum was developed in this district and signed off on, Dr. Mayor, was that roughly about 4 years ago?
It was signed off on, year before.
Year before last it was finalized, it was started since then. So having everyone on the same lines as far as what our end goals are as far as curriculum. Another thing, when you were talking about, you know, some of the smaller country schools, some of the things that actually have, that they voted for taxes within their area. The tax levy here is 3.17? 2.87, 2.83, yes, because we had to drop it, so there wasn't a significant gain. Yes, and some of the ones in the area are 2 and 3 times as high as ours are. So Miami, for one, to be able to keep, Malta Bend, for one, to be able to keep their school, that small school, open in that area, the town rallies behind it financially, you know. So that's something that, you know, hopefully we can get some rally behind our town as well, so.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the plan, is before we put anything on a ballot, personally, whether I'm involved directly on the board or not, I really want I's dotted and T's crossed. And you're always going to have people that are not going to vote for a tax, no matter what. But if you can just make the argument solid, then you'll sway a lot more people. And I don't want to just go, hey, Harry, let's throw one on there in April, and then do this, and never talk about it again. That's been done before, and it didn't work. I'm not even close. So I don't want to do that. I want the town to grow, and I want the school district to prosper with it. But we have to do it right. We have to make sure that, you know.
Oh, I wish I knew that answer.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of why we want to have these.
It's got,
We want to know what is keeping people from voting.
Just shut down Facebook.
I think it's got to.
So the question was, what can we do to get more buy-in, to come within the school district, to come in with more support to the town? There's going to have to be a lot of things. It sounds like for this gentleman is, we're going to have to raise some scores in order for him to see, you know, something going on. He sees that trend starting to go up, so maybe his support will start going up. One of the things that's also in our strategic plan is that we want to involve as many people across the community as we can within groups, committees, and organizations. That's one of our bullet points that we currently have now. And so bringing in other people within the community will draw natural investment. You talk to your friends about those. So starting those small conversations leads to the larger conversations. You know, I can't sit up here and change your mind. It sounds like a politician if I'm up here trying to give you a speech and a spiel. But when you start having parents and friends start telling success stories, when you start talking about going to meetings and about momentum, when you start having those things build in those small groups, then that becomes infectious. And when that becomes more infectious, then you'll have more support. And hopefully those are the ways that we're looking at doing those kind of things. Whether it's, you know, opening ourselves up a little bit more, as Mr. Blakely said, you know, I don't know what any of you all are thinking. There could be somebody in here that's got 5 different kinds of ugly they want to talk about tonight, you know, but we're going to talk about it and see what happens. You know, we changed our open discussion policy. You know, there's going to be people that are going to come in there with great things. There's going to be people that come in there and we're going to say, man, we should have just left the policy alone probably. But, you know, you have to become, you know, we want to be as transparent as we can as a board. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to be vulnerable. And so this is kind of a vulnerability that we're exposing and trying to have here with these conversations. It's starting, I can tell you at the board meeting, and any of us up here can tell you, there's probably 5 people in the audience at a board meeting. 2 of those people have no vested interest within the district. The rest of them are employees, are people that are actually paid people of the district that are there for reports or because they come to the meetings. Tonight, I see 20 people out here in the audience, and none of you all are paid by the district except the superintendent who's sitting here. So there's been a change just in us offering a different type of meeting to where there's a different kind of support, you know, and there's a different type of conversation that's going to start happening. Whether Facebook thinks I did it all wrong or we did it all wrong tomorrow, you'll read about that, and there'll be notes about that tonight or tomorrow or discrepancies that they have, you know, but there's also going to be hopefully some dialogue that goes back and forth between citizens, you know, and that's where we're trying to get is the dialogue back and forth. So.
One of the things is, we live in a community that is very much older. And to get that older community with the younger community is necessary. We get some of these kids out of this classroom, like the trail days. Don't we have a robotics class? We need to get those kids out in the community where people can see them. They can't make the connection. That's one of the things when I talk to people, they don't make a connection between the school and how that affects them every day. I wish that there was something in there that we get the kids out, that they can see the kids in the neighborhood and say, hey, that's what we're paying for, that's what we're taking care of. Because all they see is their taxes are going up.
Is that something to take back on the list?
A little bit.
Okay.
I don't think it'll solve all the problems that we're talking about here.
Mhm.
But one way that we could get more community involvement and help build the school spirit
Mhm.
is I wanted to talk about starting a baton twirling program with the school. So like have middle schoolers, have a middle school group of baton twirlers in high school as well. Um, and it would help get the kids more involved in their school because it would be similar to dance force or like cheerleaders, you know, have school pride and perform at basketball games and football games. It would be a great way for the kids to, you know, build confidence, discipline, and also get to perform in front of their peers and for the community. And it would be all about the owls and like school spirit. And I just think that it would be a really great way to show the community like our school pride. And they could also perform at like the Saline County barbecue. So like some community events for the Christmas parade, stuff like that. But I'm Amanda Skorleski. I went to Marshall High School. I twirled baton with the marching band. It was super fun, and I would just really like to give that opportunity to more kids here in Marshall. And and I'm the UCM baton coordinator in Warrensburg with the marching band. So there's also opportunities beyond high school. There's college scholarships and just so many great things that baton twirling can give a student. And I would love to be able to offer that and be the baton sponsor for the school and share the baton because it's really great. Oh, and I would be able to help with it. Sorry. I would also love to help with the color guard with the marching band in high school. I know a lot of guard members at UCM that would love to come share their knowledge, do some choreography, you know, just help out the marching band.
So for those of you at home, hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to try to paraphrase some of this that went on in the last few minutes. So Amanda is a former student of the Marshall School District, and she was talking about roughly some auxiliary programs, to say baton twirling and other things that she's involved in at UCM as well currently now that she would like to see brought back into the fold. within the district. The original thought was that asking what we can do to get the community to be a little bit more connected. Amanda's idea was that we also have a little bit more extracurricular activity involvement as well. So I'm going to encourage you to get a hold of the principals at the middle school and high school to talk about programs that they may be interested in or maybe volunteering that could happen within those programs.
I would say get in touch with the band.
Are the band?
Principal who could get in touch with the director of the music program.
Okay, so get in touch with the Summers family, and that would be within the music program.
And she had talked to me about bringing it to a board meeting or something like that. So
So,
The correct person to start with is the activities director,
okay.
Kelly Callahan.
So I would suggest that you get a hold of the activities director. That is Kelly Callahan. And also with the Summers. And then you can move from there to look at them bringing a proposal back to us as a board, or just looking at adding that in as a volunteer or something else that can be done there on site within those programs. Yeah, it's not anything that we have to sign off on as far as other programs to come into the district. The superintendent writes budget line item things, so if it's something about uniforms or batons or whatever that would be, those things are things that would fall into a budgetary area that would probably go underneath the band, the marching auxiliaries, those types of things as well. So the boosters might be also another place for you to talk to the mob, as they call it, the band boosters, so as well. So the original thought also came over here was getting the town and the school a little bit more connected. We're not as connected as we used to be. Sadly, COVID has disconnected quite a bit of things that we have. We don't have performances the same as we did 3 years ago. That changes the way people come out to events. For those of you who are maybe, we'll say 40 or so, the only thing that happened in Friday night in Marshall 25, 30 years ago were football games. It didn't matter what else was going on in town. The entire town stopped to go to football games. There's a different level of interest with people now. And so everyone's not interested in coming out to football games, or everybody's not interested in coming to the Philharmonic or to the band or to those other things. But we still do use those opportunities to go various places and to be out in the community. If there's some place that you think that, a group would be very beneficial, then, I ask you to talk to maybe Brian Wilcoxon at the Career Center. They've got the skills program there. Culinary arts, they do cater and do things as well. So maybe as you're having a city event or maybe even a personal event, that's someplace you can reach out and give a little business back to the town, to the district. And then also they're doing it at very low cost because they're doing it for education. And then also those conversations happen. This came from the culinary arts program, so those things are kind of natural small things that happen that can bleed out into larger scale items.
Plug our vocational school kids. They had some great awards we talk about this. Media coverage would be something that would help us if we had more media. I know the kids were at the KMMO. Well, our vocational kids did a pretty darn good job, and I'm a strong supporter of vocational. Won a lot of awards in the last contest. I don't know how we get that information out there, pass it on and tell people. I know it's going to be on our the school web page and things like that. I know you shared it with us. But, auto mechanics, for example, I went and talked to those kids a few weeks ago, and the way they go win some awards. Our kids do well. When I first got on, I told my wife I wouldn't do this. When I first got on the school board, Dr. Mayer would be bringing those kids to the board meeting, and they would be showing us all the great things going on from the elementary, and I'm thinking, we got to get that to the public. We got to get that to the public. And then we started streaming, and then COVID hit. And I thought, when those kids came before us at the board meetings, that was impressive, what was happening in some of these buildings and some of these rooms. And we didn't get to share it. People didn't get to see it, and then we had to shut it down. I think that would be something that if we ever get over this COVID thing, we'll go with it. Our kids are still doing well. We can say what you want about the school district. I've been in the buildings. Our kids are still doing well.
No. He just asked about masks and the vaccine, the shots, so, which are, everything is optional. Did you?
Mr. Carroll, you're absolutely right about the kids. I belong to Kiwanis, and some of the teachers will bring people there to put on a program, and they're just outstanding as far as that goes. I want to make one other comment to go back to the bond issues. Mayor, if you remember, you gathered some information for me, and I'm going off the top of my head now, that somewhere between 60 and 70% of the population of Marshall is over 65 years old. And those are the ones that vote, and they don't want to increase their taxes. Now, how you're going to solve that problem, I don't know. But the young people don't vote, even though it benefits the most. And I think to myself once in a while, somebody voted for a bond issue when I was in high school and gave us a new building. And so they supported the kids back then. Why we're not doing it more of it now, I don't know. But that's one battle, and how you solve it, I have no idea. But the older people don't want any increase in their taxes, and they don't care. Their kids are out of school, and they don't, they want Marshall to be good, but they're not willing to pay for it.
I believe it was the second bond issue that I worked on. You might have been on that one, Roger. We made a specific focus group and targeted the elderly as much as we possibly could. And I honestly believe they weren't the ones that defeated that election, because we have no way of breaking that numbers down. But we targeted them, and now that one really bothered me, because we got the support in that age group, or we were pretty sure we had that support in that age group, and it was the other people that took us down. Maybe we should have had more targeting. We don't have enough people to target everything. But I know I was working with a group that was targeting that age group. Now, we dropped it down to about 55. And we targeted them specifically, and we really thought we had them on us, and I thought that one was going to pass. And then, because we can't break the demographics down, but we can go and look at it. We did look at it afterwards, and we really, truly thought that that group didn't let us down. It was the other ones that did.
I think another thing is, and we're the only district we see as far as teacher retention and keeping teachers here. It's a nationwide thing. It's been well publicized, but people, they focus, it's tunnel vision when you're talking about your hometown. So, if we can prove to the community that what we're doing is bringing in good educators and locking them down, maybe that helps, keeping them here. And I don't know the full day of PD, if that makes a difference. I don't know. That's what we're going to have to sit down and have some hard conversations with people and figure out what they want us to do, in order to get that support. And we still may not get it when the day comes. It has a lot to do with what time of the year you do it too. April elections, November elections, what's on it already, and you don't know until you file it. So sometimes it's a win-win, sometimes it's a lose-lose, but we have to try to tackle it. You have something coming on there? Anybody else have anything?
So there were a couple of other questions that got sent in by email that I was going to answer as well, or we were going to look back through. So one of the questions was, how are students placed in Marshall paid for, why should we pay for other district students? I believe this is probably a reference to children that are probably attending our school district, probably through Great Circle, or people who are not actually true citizens of the county. Regardless of where someone comes from, students who are placed in Marshall by the state are funded by the Public Placement Fund and not local money. So that money is paid for those students not out of your tax dollars or anything else. They're supported with public funds that come from somewhere else, and also from sending districts. If we have a student that chooses to do an online situation, then we pay that daily rate to that person who is doing that for us, whether that's maybe MoCap or whoever the other vendor would be, because they're truly not students of our district or in seat. So we have to pay for that program. So money kind of follows the person, if you think of it that way, versus it's not a daily rate that we necessarily get because kids are coming, because we have other people that are here, maybe that have residency in Columbia or other places. We still get paid for those students here with our district, and it doesn't change our tax ratings, our tax numbers.
Well, and I'll follow up on the next question, which is, I think it all came from the same information, but it was a question about services for homeless students and families. We get a grant for $185,000 that pays for our homeless services. And by the state of Missouri's requirements, I guess, or thresholds, we currently have 144 students in our district that are considered homeless by the state of Missouri. So I don't know for sure. I think that's if you don't live with your parent or guardian, basically. So we've got, they call them, when I was in high school, it was a couch surfer. You jump from couch to couch, but right now there's 144 kids that need those services that qualify for that. And it all comes from a grant. I don't know.
And it's $185,000 a year.
Yeah, $185,000 a year. We have to reapply for that every year. Okay.
I was just going to say I heard a couple gasps when people said 144 students in a town this small and this size. When you're talking about a district of somewhere around 1,300 students, and you're talking about 144 of them, you're talking about a very large population. When you look at our free and reduced lunch numbers, our poverty levels within the school system, you're talking about 40 to 50% of our students, again, on those levels as well. So, you have to understand the demographic of the students that you're supporting. When we were talking about test scores earlier, if I'm hungry, sitting in seat, I'm not going to learn as well. Sometimes we have to meet basic needs where they are, and then we can work on equity and getting people up to the level that we need to be. And so we're recognizing a lot of those basic needs. Our social work team, I think, does a phenomenal job with addressing those needs, looking out to those, whether it's backpack drives or driving kids home or making calls at 7:30 on a Friday night. They're doing those things, and those things also take community support. Backpack drives happen because a bank in the community also donates some money, donates some supplies, as well as when we fill a bus, that comes from you all in the community, coming and putting items on a bus for us to be able to redistribute back out. A call for coats. I saw one that came out for Valley students as well. When it got really cold here, we've got some students that aren't used to cold weather that came here to Valley, and they didn't know what they were necessarily getting into with Missouri December, and so they were here in Missouri in shorts and T-shirts when they needed parkas, or bigger coats. Our students need those kind of things also within district because they don't have those provided for them. So we meet people at a lot of different levels. And, we need to understand that, what we see as a traditional student, they're not traditional anymore. Everyone is a lot different animal. Our teachers deal with people who are totally across the board, from people who come from, middle-class families all the way down to families or not having families at all. So, there's a level of compassion that we deal with while we do instruction and everything else. And I'm saying we because I'm talking on behalf of the district, but I know I don't teach there, so.
Our border is wide open and 1 million people come up here. Does it affect students from,
I don't think we have a large transient population. We do have a lot of subsets of population. So, but I don't believe our diversity of the school is any different than our diversity of the town.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a direct
and our
if
diversity.
they can't speak English, you probably have to have extra teachers and all that stuff.
We do have some programs that are English language with
ESL?
or ELL or
English
English
as
as a
a
second
second
language,
English second,
those
yeah.
kind of things.
And it may affect us more later on too.
Those things can, yes.
Yeah.
But we also garner diversity from those people too, you know, and we have to treasure those people that are also within the district as well, you know. Everybody at one time was a foreigner, you know, and we're all here because we're here, you know, and hopefully, you know, this community is gonna be this community, as we just said. You know, Amanda tells, you know, I'm back in town trying to do a little bit of something and maybe work with the community. That's something else one of the things that I do is I sit on our region executive committee for Region 5. Right now, I'm reviewing Belcher scholarships as well from across the state. We're reviewing, I think the district I have, for some reason, we only had 5 scholarships. Our region scholarships, we're Region 5, there are 9 or 10 scholarships within our region. But there's smaller ones in other areas, you know. So, you know, just looking at those. But as I'm reading through those, the topic this year is teachers and how you bring teachers back into the classroom, how you can maybe do some of the grow your own programs, which is something that we're kind of on the floor with and started here a couple of years ago with looking at blocks and trying to, you know, increase teachers as they're coming out of districts. You know, one of the things that may be on the table in the future is looking at teachers kind of like people look at nurses. You know, nurses get sign-on bonuses. They get recruitment bonuses to come back or maybe to work for a certain amount of years somewhere. And some of the things that I've read and other districts have talked about or are talking about doing is, you know, giving scholarships to students with the intent that they will return back to their districts, you know, to teach. You know, so, you know, there's the way of recruiting teachers to form our future generations is what we need to look at. Mr. Lynn said something before that, you know, is kind of a big idea for me that, you know, somebody voted for a tax levy for me, you know, and we've got to look at that, you know, yeah, nobody wants to pay taxes, but these taxes are an investment in our future. You know, passing a levy for buildings is to get your children at a better quality. Is it going to affect us maybe? It's going to affect people in 20 years that are living here. Hopefully I'm still around in 20 years. You know, I know some people are saying in 20 years I won't be around and it doesn't matter. But those kids that are growing up are going to be now 25-year-olds. They're going to be the people going into the workforce. They're going to be the people that are at the bank managing your money. So you may not want to give them any now, but if they don't know how to count it, if they don't know how to invest it, they're going to be in charge of it later on. They're going to be the people at the hospital. They're going to be the people that are going out and are going to be diagnosing you with things. You have to think about it in terms of this is an investment in our future when you're looking at bond issues, not what's coming out of my pocket exactly right now and counting it in dollars and cents.
It's exactly what I was going to say, Brian. Word for word.
Well, I know there's a lot of different countries and there's a lot of different languages and all that stuff. And if we have an influx of a lot of people, it's going to cost us some money to try to educate the people.
Change things. Sure. Yes. Is there anything else from the back? No, we're not. We're not quite done. We're going to run over a couple more of
She's
these
got-
questions here. Yes, sir.
Well, unless you're gonna answer questions, my only other question was, so where do you go from here? Like, what's the next step after tonight, or what do you do with what you've heard and learned tonight?
Well, I think we have to get our strategic plan in place before we can do anything, because I can't bring it to you and say, vote for this, and you say, what is it? And I go, I don't know. I'll get back to you. I don't want to do that. We'll have everything set so we know what direction we want to move as a board and as a district before we go. Now, one of the reasons to have these meetings the week before the board meeting was so if things come up that maybe needs to be brought forward on the agenda, we have time to do that and still get it on there in the legal time we have. So next month, we're going to talk about this get together Tuesday night, and hopefully everybody's still on board with wanting to continue to do it. And then next month we're going to do it again, and we'll have some information. There may be a month where we don't do it, but it won't be because we don't want to. It may just not, logistically work out for everybody. We're going to try to keep it at 3 members, so we don't have to make it a meeting. Like I said, that was the farthest thing from my mind, doing it.
Tell them why, sunshine laws, we've got to, if there are 4 of us in the room, then we have to write it all out and do all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
If we say anything, so we have to be careful.
No, we're gonna rotate people around. So different board members will get different input, and so yeah.
So is there a strategic plan that's already started, or are you just beginning to make the plan?
We have the strategic plan from the administrators. Yeah, I had to get straightened out on this at the last board meeting, so I know a little bit about that. And now the strategic plan will come from the Board of Education. And matter of fact, I got 2 questions for Dr. Mayer, and one of them is going to be on that, and I'm going to talk to her right after the meeting about getting to work on the strategic plan from our end. Yeah, I've got the copy of the administrative version, and I didn't know we had to do one. I kept saying, we're done, but no, we're not. So, and then that one will probably be, if I may be mistaken, where we would put things like the elementary school complex, what we want to do with the high school, what we want to do with the middle schools and things of this nature. So at least that's my thought of it. I'm jumping the gun on that because I don't have it yet, but that's where I want to go with it.
And this will be my first one on the board, but the way I understand it, we've got the foundation of it in place. We just have to we have to make it our own now. So everything is there. We just have to fill in the blanks with what we decide we need to do. So.
The strategic plan in its current draft form is available on the website, and so you can go on and see that where the administrative team is left off. Just kind of phases of the strategic plan, how it has came about is the first thing that we did is we developed board vision or board goals. We have 4 goals that we came up with as a board. After that, then we went back, and pre-COVID, we had community groups. We had asked people from various kind of walks of life to kind of come around and work on the groups. The groups all averaged about 10 people apiece, and they were in each one of the topics. So we had people who were both administrators in the school, teachers within the school, as well as people that were from the community in various walks of life at that time that went over and kind of came out with, hey, we want to look at teacher retention, or we want to look at how we bring more people into the district, or whatever those goals or whatever those steps were. And now it's kind of gone back to the administrator said, okay, well, we think we can do this, this, and this to go forward. Then the board has to put its final touch on and blessing basically to it. So the plan is roughly, I would say, 75%, 80% complete. So. A question for clarity. Sometimes I find when I'm talking to people and people ask me questions that everyone's got a different type of lingo, we'll say. Whatever your job is, you use different acronyms. Everyone speaks in the same terminology. You all understand everything like it's a foreign language maybe to some people when they're listening to you talk about it, but it all makes sense to you all when you're standing there. So one of the things within the district is, one of the questions came up was the compliance officer is the superintendent. Well, the compliance officer in a district doesn't do anything about is the district complying to certain things. What the compliance officer looks at is claims of discrimination and harassment. So what we do to look at our books and other things are auditing firms. And so that's where you get financial compliance maybe with things. Also, when you're looking at evaluations, you're looking at those on building level from the superintendent looking at her principals and the principals looking at their teams and looking at those things. So those are ways that we internally look at things. But, the term of compliance officer is not what someone thought it meant as that they are actually as the district complying with things. This is just making sure that if someone says there was some discrimination or harassment within something, that person looks in and investigates those situations, not a true dollar and cents compliance. So. I don't know if there were any other questions or things on here that we maybe didn't touch yet.
Well, there was a question submitted, and it was pretty early. Actually, it was the second one submitted. It said, I would like to know why we do not have school spirit at sporting events. So there's a couple of high schoolers sitting here. Maybe they could come up and tell us why. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, yeah. I mean, I do know from I'm sorry. I do know from having two children in the high school right now that there's a lot of outside dampening that goes on for our kids, and sometimes they do get, I don't know, maybe out of hand or loud or I don't know maybe inappropriate. My kids don't. Other people's kids may, but no, never. There's a lot of other adults at these games, and sometimes they're not real keen on hearing the yelling and the cheering and the chanting. So, maybe it's a talk to grandma and grandpa about coming and wearing a foam finger and yelling and a cowbell and a bullhorn. Whatever we need to do.
I was going to say, I've been to a lot of different sporting events. School spirit is still alive and well in Marshall. We may not do things the same as other towns do, and that's because we don't have some of those same traditions. When Matt said cowbells, I went to Excelsior Springs to a football game, and they ring cowbells. They ring cowbells and carry in cowbells like nobody's business in the middle of the city, pretty much. But that's not something that we do here. But we do have a student section that is at our football games, the birdcage section, and they self-lead. They do cheers with the cheerleaders. They are very responsive to each other and to at pep assemblies and other things as well. You're not going to probably hear a chanting going on at a baseball game, but you definitely can see other students coming there and supporting, as well as other parents and individuals. So, I encourage you, if you think there's no school spirit, then go out to some of these things and be part of the audiences. The change has to be the person that's sitting there doing the complaining. You have to turn around and be the people that start cheerleading a different way.
Go Owls, go Owls.
I mean, we have an amazing band too to listen to.
Yeah. Well,
There is a student organization called Birdcage.
yes.
That maybe students, it's not all parents or students are aware of, and then by all means, if you want kids involved, let's get them over there. Those are the kids that are at the games, they're at all of the games, they're the ones having a good time. And it's not necessarily a bunch of unruly kids, it is kids being supportive of their school and saying, hey, we're here and we're loud, and you're gonna hear us whether you like it or not. And if the more kids they can get involved, the better. So if you've got eighth graders that come in as a freshman, they're at back to school night, they're at freshman orientation, get them involved and say, sign them up, say, let's go to these games, let's get these kids involved and get this community involved.
So what she said was basically reiterating the fact that the birdcage is alive and well in the high school, and they're very supportive. One of the young ladies said, buy a T-shirt. I bought one, $15 first day. Got it. I wore it to a football game, and I thought, do I have to go sit with the students now? But, support things that are going on in your community. Everybody gets tired of buying candy bars, doing this and that, whatever those fundraisers are. But remember, those kids are selling those things so that they can go and do something else, whether it's funding their FFA competitions, whether it's making money for the birdcage for them to have some operating funds, or whether it's for the baseball team to be able to travel and go out of state to a tournament that they're very proud of going to every year, and since we've been doing some of that stuff and they've been traveling and going to that, they've been performing a lot better as well. You can definitely see where their placing and things like that are going on, so, there's a lot of things that are going on. I talked with Miss Peel a couple of weeks ago. They're going to have more of a local robotics tournament that's going to be taking place at State Fair Community College that she's been working with them to get set up, so there's something more local. I believe that they had to go to southern Missouri, I believe, to compete for their robotics competition. It was some weather that wasn't great, and it was, if they don't get to go down there, this is their only shot. They don't reschedule that. They're not going to let us come back at a later date or at a later time. So, we've got to also focus on bringing some of those things back here. We renovated our track. Like it or not, I know there's pluses and minuses, but it's something that need to be done for safety as well. But also that's something that maybe is going to bring in a district track meet to our location. District track meets mean that people are going to go to McDonald's and buy food. Means that people are going to stop at your square and spend money. So those kind of things that the school can attract and draw in, feed back into your town, feed back into our town. So make sure you're thinking about those things instead of just saying, oh man, they're going to have districts here this weekend, I won't be able to leave my house. No, but it's going to help the economy of your town, for that weekend of support. The gates, the admissions that we make at those times, little bits of money all over the place make a difference. And the more that we can get in, the more it's going to help us all out in the long run. So,
Well, and every improvement we make is something to be proud of. Maybe not for you, but it may be for you. So you guys get together and you talk, and maybe we figure out something you're proud of, maybe you're not. Everything we do, one coat of paint is something to be proud of in our district for what we have, the buildings. This is a beautiful auditorium, and 2/3 of the people in town may not know that. So next month they can come and they can see it themselves and talk. So I don't know. There's a lot more to school spirit too than stomping on the bleachers and yelling, just being proud of being from Marshall, going to school at Marshall. I graduated here in '95. I chose to stay. I didn't have to. I could have went somewhere else, but I chose to stay, and I don't ever plan on leaving. I love this town. I want to see it do nothing but good. So whatever we can do to be proud of our district and proud of our town, I think we should take the steps to do it. So I sound like I'm running. I'm not.
I think I am, but that's okay.
anybody else have anything out here?
I think my final comments are going to be, if we do anything, it's going to have to come from the people. That's all there is to it. If they get behind us, we'll try to lead. And if they get behind us, maybe we can get something done. But it's got to come. Grassroots does everything.
Does that mean we're done? Can I leave?
One more thing, and then we're going to go. So I was just going to piggyback off one more thing that Matt said about having pride in your town. I spend 4 out of my 5 work days in other towns. I wear my Marshall shirts in Sedalia. The looks that I get, who cares? Because I want them to know where I'm from, and what's going on here, and everyone needs to have that kind of pride about things when they're stepping out and moving forward. So, thank you all for coming out tonight. There's a handful of questions. This generates some conversation. People watching at home, you're going to have some conversation. You're probably going to have comments floating up faster than we can even get out of this auditorium. But remember, you have to look at things. We're looking at things from a very macro level here at the board level. We have to look at things from the view from up high looking down. If you're having, one of the questions that came in was, one building looks cleaner than another building when I'm in it. Well, if you're seeing those kind of things, then you need to bring that to the building leaders level. Saying that all maintenance people aren't doing a good job isn't true. Our old custodians aren't doing a job isn't true. Our old educators aren't doing their job. That's not a true statement. If you're having issues with a particular person or a particular situation, then you need to take that into the building to try to get it solved and worked on. Nothing's going to get fixed on Facebook. Nothing's going to get fixed at the grocery store gossiping and being mad. Things are going to get fixed when you come to people and you talk to the people that can help with those situations. So we all got on the board for various reasons, but one of the main reasons we all got on the board is, like Matt said and Harry says, because we want our students in our community to be better. And that's why we're all here. That's my closing thought. If anybody else wants to say anything else, fine. Otherwise, we will bid you a good evening.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. It was very, very good turnout for the first one, so.